Well, the shed in the box barely fits the tractor, and it certainly isn't going to fit the tractor with the mower on it. But yesterday was its first maiden voyage of the cutter, and so today I'm going to take a better look at this wheel assembly and figure out what I'm going to do. Last night I was doing some research online and figuring out how I was going to approach this. Turns out that according to the parts diagram, there don't appear to be any bearings in this post right here. Either that or on the diagram I was looking on, they're not present. This right here, this arm, comes up on both sides here and comes across and has the post on top. That's sold as a weldment. It doesn't have the one that I saw in the diagram, the old style. It does actually look just like this now that I look at it, because I think in the diagram I was looking at it from the front side, which from the front there's this rounded area here. So that's definitely the one I saw in the diagram last night, parts diagram. So if you're looking at the parts diagram for a 305, you gotta look, it'll say like tail wheel assembly, I believe, and then it'll say like old style tail wheel assembly. Well, this is the old style tail wheel assembly. So I had mentioned that this was a little sloppy in here, but the main problem is the wheel. So I found on one website, looking under the parts list, it looked like the complete wheel assembly, which is the hub in the middle here and the wheel with a new tire on it, is still available. I saw on one distributor's website, it was like a $240 item. Then I was looking on eBay and just Googling, and found that apparently there's an aftermarket wheel assembly that is used on this cutter and others. And I found that it's funny, they called it a 4" by 8", which kind of like made me think, I know this is bigger in diameter than an 8". But then when I went to another site and found the same wheel assembly, I realized that what they're talking about for the 8", they're actually talking about the wheel part in the middle here. And they said that the overall dimension on it was 15 inches. And if I now measure this tire, I can see it's 15 inches. So it's the correct size wheel assembly. So that I found for as cheap as $105 plus shipping. And one site I saw the shipping was only about $10. So now we're getting into a little more reasonable, $115. Then I looked on Tractor Supply's site. Tractor Supply sells only one trailing wheel replacement assembly, but it's only $65. And the thing is, the dimensions are the same. It's the 4" wide by 8" rim, which is going to give me the same size. So the only difference is that on the more expensive one, replacement I saw, the hub, I couldn't see any photographs of that one. All I could see were drawings. And in the drawings, the hub looked beefier, like this one that's on here, as opposed to the one on Tractor Supply's website, where it's an actual photograph of the item. This center hub area looks thinner. So I contemplated whether or not I wanted to buy the heavier one or the lighter one. And then I realized just because the drawing shows it heavier doesn't mean that once I order it and I get it in, I might be dismayed to find that they ship me something that's no better quality than the Tractor Supply one. So, I mean, there's no way of knowing for sure what, even if I ordered the one that was supposedly from an actual brush hog distributor, whether or not that would be as heavy as this original one. So to make a long story short, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some measurements off of here, and I'm going to go check out the Tractor Supply one. Hopefully my local Tractor Supply has one in stock, because it does say that it's available in stores. And I'm going to take a look. Now, this arm, as I had mentioned in the previous video, not this one, this one's straight. This arm right here has been bent in, and I suspect that was bent in purposefully by the previous owner when he was jury rigging this weird homemade bearing setup that he tack welded in there and made a whole mess. So what I want to do is I want to take the dimension up here. So the inside dimension there is 5.5 inches. Yeah, 5.5 inches, and that would leave, maybe about a 1/16 of an inch play in there. So I know that if I bend out this leg on the bottom here a little more, I'll be able to get 5.5 inches out of that. So that's my first critical dimension that I needed to know. Of course, I know the wheel size, it's 15-inch OD. And then the other dimension I was curious about was on the new assemblies, they give you a bolt. And this is a 1-inch bolt. Well, actually, it's a 1-inch shaft that's in there right now. I believe the original assembly had a flat piece of steel welded onto the end of a rod like this that went through and had threads on this end, and then a nut went on it. So I think the new replacement assembly is they just give you a big bolt. And if the bolt is 3/4 inch, it's going to be too small. So I have to make a decision at that point what I want to do there. The other thing I need to know is whether or not the bolt's going to be long enough. So the outside dimension is also something I want to know, which on this one it's 6 5/8 of an inch. So 6 5/8. So, and then I've got to have basically enough sticking out of the bolt sticking out to get the nut on, and probably a washer. So I got to take that into account too when I'm putting this all together. So let's go off to the store and see what we can find. While I'm at Tractor Supply, I'm also going to take a look at their PTO shields that they sell there and see whether or not that's something I could use on this. The PTO shields they seem to be oddly expensive to me. I mean, I understand that they've got to be made out of a very strong plastic, or at least you hope they're made out of a very strong plastic to take the punishment that they take. But they just, it kind of boggles my mind why they get so expensive. The cheap one at Tractor Supply is like $130 or something like that. So I'll take a look and see if that one will work. So the thing that I got to look at here is the size here. This is the groove where one end of the PTO shield bearing would attach to, and this is the other groove over here, and they're the same size on both ends. That one's going to need to be cleaned up with a wire wheel, but they're the same size. And then of course I also want to see my length here, although my understanding is that the PTO shields basically come and then you just cut the ends where they overlap each other if they're too long. So I want to know what the size of this shaft is, and the PTO shaft. Alright, it looks like it's a little over 2 inches, but it looks like that OD of that area with the down here in the groove, well, it looks like that's dead on 2 inch. So I'm wondering if that's standardized enough so that I can use one of their PTO shields. I'm going to find out. And then as far as the overall length, let's see, I'm guessing, because I want it to cover this part here, and I want it to cover this part here, so I'm guessing I want to see the length be like from here to, I'm going to have to put the video camera down and hold my tape. I'm going to measure the length from here to here. That length ended up being about 37 inches. Of course, that length changes because as the cutter's lowered and raised, the length of the PTO shaft changes. But I just kind of wanted to get a ballpark idea of the length of it so I would know roughly which PTO shield to buy, because I think they do have something like a regular length one and a longer one. Chances are this is going to be the regular length. I stopped at Tractor Supply on the way home and picked up that wheel, and much to my dismay, it doesn't come with a new axle or spindle, depending on which terminology you want to use. But anyways, it doesn't come with one. And then I went to another place, and he had one, but it was smaller. But what bothered me was when I tried to take a 1-inch pin at Tractor Supply, they had these big 1-inch pins, and I was going to just use one of those as a spindle or an axle. It wouldn't fit in that wheel. Now the wheel clearly is from King Cutter. It's I'll show you that in a second. But I think the problem is that this uses a 1-inch pin, and the if this is even the original pin that's in there, I mean, that's exactly 1 inch. And what I'll show you is, I'll show you what the King Cutter wheel assembly looks like. So here's the 403001 tire and rim, 40-inch to 72-inch cutter with a K, so obviously for King Cutter. Tire and rim with fabricated hub. And then of course it's King Cutter right on the side there incorporated. This is right off the shelf of Tractor Supply. And it looks nice as far as being, you know, the right size wheel. It's you know, it's a 4-inch wide, solid rubber laminated wheel. But here's the problem. Let me pull this cap off here and take a look. The problem is this hole right here is not, it won't take a 1-inch pin. It's undersized just a little bit. Just enough to ruin your day. Let's see. So, about there. And that's about 900 and... Oh, looks like 900, just a hair under 990 thousandths. So, go figure. Why would they do a rotten thing like that? So, my problem is, if I want to if I want to use this wheel, I either have to get a spindle from King Cutter, which is going to be slightly smaller and it's going to be kind of sloppy in that weldment, or I get the correct 1-inch spindle from maybe like a bush hog dealer, and then ream this out so I can use this wheel. Because I mean, we're only talking about a little over 10 thousandths. But the other thing I noticed too was on this one is that this is just like a straight insert or a bushing inside this hub, and then there's a void inside there that basically gets filled with grease. So the reason why I mention that is because the more expensive wheel and hub assemblies that I was looking at online, I think the reason why this section was thicker on those is they may have actually had a bearing in there. On the original parts breakdown of some of the old bush hog tail wheel assemblies, they actually had a needle bearing inside there, and that obviously is a much better setup than this, in my opinion. So I haven't yet decided what I'm going to do. I'm going to check online and do a little more research, but I think for starters I'm going to return this wheel assembly back to Tractor Supply. Well, maybe I'll hold on to it for a few days and in case I decide to ream this out and use it. But if it's not going to be too much more expensive to get the other wheel assembly, the problem is it could be 30 bucks just for that pin or axle. If it's like $30 for the axle and you add that to the 70 bucks for this, this was like 68 bucks, then you're at like 100 bucks, and then you're wondering why for like 10 or $20 more I can get the wheel assembly that's supposedly made for the 305 bush hog, which may even have needle bearings in it. So I'll sort all this out later.